There is no way I wouldn't recognize her. The words echoed through the bridal suite, and every sound around us disappeared. The bridesmaids stopped smiling. Someone quietly lowered a champagne glass before it slipped from her hand. Even the photographer, who had been clicking away non-stop all morning, forgot to press the shutter. Daniel was still holding another woman's hand, not mine. He had removed the blindfold himself. He had looked directly into Chloe's face. They smiled and confidently declared that he could never mistake her for anyone else. Only after the silence stretched long enough to become unbearable did he finally let go. His smile faltered. "Oh, I meant Emma." Nobody laughed. Not this time. I watched him standing there in his tailored black tuxedo, looking embarrassed rather than shocked, as though his biggest mistake wasn't choosing the wrong woman, but realizing he'd said the quiet part out loud. That should have been the moment I started crying. It wasn't. Oddly enough, I felt calmer than I had all morning. Because somewhere deep inside, I already knew. The blindfold hadn't revealed the affair. It had revealed that everyone else had been blind, especially me. 24 hours earlier, our wedding weekend had looked perfect. Daniel Harper and I were getting married at one of Napa Valley's most beautiful vineyard resorts. Rows of vines stretched across rolling hills. Stone pathways wound between lavender gardens. Every terrace overlooked vineyards glowing beneath the California sunset. It was exactly the kind of venue couples spent years dreaming about. I'd spent almost 10 months making sure every detail deserved that dream. People often assumed hiring an event planner meant weddings became effortless. The opposite was true. Knowing every possible disaster only meant you spent months preventing disasters nobody else would ever notice. I coordinated transportation for guests arriving from 3 different airports, negotiated last-minute menu changes, solved floral shortages after unexpected storms, adjusted seating charts because 2 relatives hadn't spoken in 11 years, reserved a ground floor suite for Daniel's 80-year-old aunt after learning she struggled with stairs. Nobody remembered those things when a wedding went well. That was the goal. Good planning was supposed to be invisible. Daniel liked telling people he was marrying the most organized woman he'd ever met. Everyone laughed, including me. Back then, I mistook admiration for appreciation. Now I understand they aren't always the same thing whenever someone complimented the wedding plans. Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders and smiled proudly. "I stayed out of it," he'd joke. "Emma wouldn't let me touch anything." Guests always laughed. So did he. Only I knew the truth. I had begged him to help. "Could you review the transportation schedule? I'm buried at work. What about confirming the rehearsal dinner menu? You'll probably change it again anyway. Can you at least call your parents about the guest list? You're better at this stuff than I am." Those conversations repeated for months. Every responsibility somehow drifted quietly into my hands. Bills, contracts, vendors, guest questions, music, decor, accommodation. Whenever I finally handled the problem myself, Daniel smiled with relief. "See? I knew you'd figure it out." At the time, I thought that was trust. Later, I realized it was dependence disguised as confidence. Our rehearsal dinner began just before sunset. Long farmhouse tables overlooked endless rows of vineyards. White candles flickered beneath strings of golden lights. The scent of rosemary bread drifted through the warm evening air. For the first time in months, everyone seemed relaxed. My father actually smiled. Daniel's mother toasted us through tears. My cousin Lily whispered, "You made it." I honestly believed we had. If anyone had asked me that evening who I trusted most besides my father, I would have answered without hesitation. Chloe Bennett. We'd met during sophomore year of college, shared a tiny apartment with unreliable heating, split grocery bills when neither of us had enough money, survived exam weeks fueled almost entirely by instant noodles and cheap coffee. When my mother died, Chloe didn't ask whether I needed company. She simply showed up. She slept on my couch for 3 straight weeks because silence had become unbearable. She answered phone calls when I couldn't speak. She reminded me to eat. She packed away my mother's clothes because I couldn't bring myself to open the closet. Some people become family by blood. Others earn that place by showing up when life collapses. Chloe had earned it. Or at least, and I believed she had. Dinner had nearly ended when Lily stood and clapped her hands together. Before dessert, we've got one quick game. Groans mixed with laughter. Daniel immediately leaned toward me. I hate these things. You'll survive. I smiled. It'll take 5 minutes. Small whiteboards and markers were passed around. The MC explained the rules. Simple questions. Bride writes one answer. Groom writes another. Compare them. Everyone laughs. Move on. Nothing serious. Nothing dangerous. At least. That's what all of us believed. The first question appeared on the screen. What is Emma's favorite flower? I smiled instantly. White peonies. There wasn't even a need to think. Every birthday after my mother passed away, I bought white peonies and placed them inside her old blue glass vase. Daniel had done it with me more than once. I confidently wrote my answer. When the countdown ended, we lifted our boards together. Mine read, white peonies. Daniel's read, yellow tulips. Laughter rolled across the terrace. Someone joked, better start studying, Groom. Daniel laughed too. Wedding brain. No sleep. It happens. The moment should have ended there. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Chloe. Only for the smallest fraction of a second, her smile disappeared. Yellow tulips. They weren't my favorite flowers. They were hers. She recovered almost instantly, raised her wine glass, and joked, well, at least somebody remembers my favorite. More laughter. Even I laughed, because one coincidence was still only one coincidence. The second question appeared. What food can Emma absolutely not eat? This one felt even easier. Almonds. Not dislike, not preference. A severe allergy. The kind that could send me to the emergency room. I wrote quickly. Daniel barely hesitated. When we turned our boards around, my stomach tightened. Mine. Almonds. His. Shellfish. Nobody laughed as loudly this time. The MC forced an awkward grin. Looks like Daniel's getting a pop quiz tonight. Daniel rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. Emma eats everything. How am I supposed to remember every ingredient? I stared at him. 2 months earlier, a restaurant had nearly served me almond flour cake. Chloe noticed before anyone else. Daniel had been sitting right beside us. Shellfish. That was Chloe's allergy, not mine. For the first time that evening, something cold settled quietly inside my chest. Something cold settled quietly inside my chest. Not panic, not jealousy. Just confusion. 2 wrong answers, both belonging to Chloe. I immediately searched for a reasonable explanation. Maybe Daniel had written too quickly. Maybe he misunderstood the questions. Maybe wedding stress had scrambled his memory. People made mistakes, especially before a wedding. Didn't they? I smiled, laughed with everyone else, finished my glass of sparkling water, and told myself to stop overthinking. Sometimes, the lies we tell ourselves are the easiest ones to believe. The MC clapped his hands enthusiastically. One more! The tiebreaker. This one's different. The crowd cheered. Daniel leaned closer. Please let this be the last one. I nudged his shoulder playfully. If you survive it. He grinned. I always survive. Looking back, that sentence was strangely accurate. He had survived months of lying, I simply hadn't realized I was the one paying the price. The final question appeared on the large projector screen. What's Emma's biggest dream after the wedding? I smiled before the words had fully appeared. Easy. We had talked about it for years. Not another promotion. Not a larger house. Not luxury vacations. I wanted a small flower shop. A place filled with fresh flowers instead of deadlines. Somewhere people came to celebrate birthdays, apologize, propose, or simply brighten someone else's day whenever wedding season became overwhelming. I'd joke, one day I'm quitting all of this. I'm opening a flower shop. Daniel had laughed every single time. I'll be your unpaid delivery driver, he used to say. Or so I remembered. The countdown ended. We lifted our boards. Mine read, own a flower shop. Daniel's read, travel Europe for a year. The applause this time felt forced. Someone laughed politely. Someone else muttered, close enough. It wasn't close. We'd never planned a year in Europe, not once. I slowly lowered my board. Daniel noticed my expression. Come on, he chuckled. We've talked about Italy. We talked about taking 2 weeks in Italy, I answered softly. Not a year. His smile stiffened. For the first time all evening, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Before anyone could say anything else, Chloe suddenly stood. She raised her champagne flute. I think we're bullying the groom. Everyone laughed with relief. Perfect timing. Exactly enough humor to rescue the moment. She looked toward Daniel. I've known you both forever. If these are your biggest problems, this marriage is going to be just fine. People applauded. The awkwardness disappeared. Or at least, everyone pretended it had. Everyone except me. Dinner slowly returned to normal. Music started again, wine flowed, conversations resumed. But every few minutes, I caught Daniel glancing toward Chloe. Not long. Not obviously, just checking. Almost as though he needed reassurance. Once, and I caught Chloe doing exactly the same thing. Their eyes met for barely 2 seconds. Then both immediately looked away. Maybe I would have ignored it another day. Tonight, after those answers, those tiny moments suddenly felt much louder. My father eventually found me standing alone beside the vineyard. The sun had almost disappeared behind the hills. Orange light stretched across endless rows of vines. He handed me another glass of water. You all right? I forced a smile. Nerves. He studied me. The way fathers sometimes do, as though they can hear thoughts you never say aloud. You've been staring at Daniel all evening. I've been staring at everybody. You've been evaluating everybody, he corrected gently. That's different. I laughed quietly. You make me sound like a detective. No, he smiled. I make you sound like your mother. That sentence hit harder than he intended. My mother noticed everything. Tiny changes in people's voices, unfinished sentences, the smiles that never reached someone's eyes. She used to tell me, your instincts whisper before they scream. If something feels wrong, don't silence it just because everyone else seems comfortable. For years, I'd believed I inherited none of that intuition. Standing beneath the vineyard lights, I suddenly wondered if perhaps I'd simply spent years refusing to listen. Later that night, Daniel found me outside our suite. He wrapped both arms around me from behind. What are you thinking about? The game, I admitted. He groaned dramatically. Seriously? You know those things are meaningless. Do I? He kissed my forehead. Emma, I've had 6 conference calls today. I've barely slept. My brain's fried. You know I love you. There it was. The perfect answer. Simple, comforting, reasonable. Every sentence made logical sense, yet somehow, none of them made the strange feeling inside me disappear. "You believe me?" he asked softly. I turned around, looked directly into his eyes. "I want to." He smiled with visible relief. "Good. Because that's exactly what I needed to hear." At the time, I thought he was relieved that I trusted him. Months later, I'd realized something else. He wasn't relieved because I'd believed him. He was relieved because I'd stopped asking questions. The wedding morning arrived beneath clear California skies. The vineyard looked like something from a magazine. Florists arranged thousands of white blooms along the ceremony aisle. String quartets rehearsed beside the fountain. Wedding coordinators checked radios. Hairstylists hurried from suite to suite. The entire property buzzed with joyful chaos. Guests wandered through the gardens taking photographs. Children chased each other across the lawn. Everything appeared perfect. Almost too perfect. Inside the bridal suite, the bridesmaids laughed while helping me into my gown. Someone turned up the music. Someone else opened champagne. Lily walked over carrying a small gift bag. "I've got one last surprise." "Oh no," I laughed. "What did you plan?" "Not me." She grinned mischievously. "The groomsmen." Every bride in the room immediately looked interested. "They've challenged us," Lily announced. "A blindfold game." Groans mixed with laughter. "The groom gets blindfolded. The brides switch places. He has to identify his future wife." Oh, using only her hands. Someone clapped excitedly. Someone shouted, "This is going to be adorable!" I laughed too. It sounded harmless. Funny. The perfect little social media moment before the ceremony. Daniel would recognize me instantly. Wouldn't he? Across the hallway, the groomsman tightened the black silk blindfold over Daniel's eyes. He laughed confidently. "This is easy," one of his friends teased. "What if you grab the wrong woman?" Daniel smiled without hesitation. "There is absolutely no chance. I'd recognize Emma anywhere." The ballroom erupted with cheers. None of us knew. Those words were about to destroy our wedding. "There is absolutely no chance. I'd recognize Emma anywhere." The cheers grew even louder. Someone whistled. Another guest laughed. The wedding photographer stepped backward, searching for the perfect angle. "This is going to make an amazing reel." One of the bridesmaids clapped excitedly. "Emma, you're definitely winning this." I laughed. "So apparently I'm competing now?" Lily grinned. "You have no idea." The atmosphere felt light again. For the first time since the rehearsal dinner, the strange heaviness inside my chest began to fade. Maybe I'd been overthinking everything. Maybe Daniel had simply had an off night. Maybe after today, we would laugh about all of it. I wanted that to be true, more than anything. The groomsmen carefully tied the black silk blindfold over Daniel's eyes. "You can't see anything?" "No," he laughed. "Not even a little." One friend waved a hand inches from his face. "How many fingers?" Daniel shrugged dramatically. "I have no idea." The crowd laughed. Someone shouted, "Looks legit!" The rules were simple. 5 women would stand in a line. Only one of them would be me. Daniel could touch each woman's hand for only a few seconds. Nothing more. No voices. No hints. No perfume. No jewelry. Just touch. Then he would announce which one was his bride. The simplicity of the game was exactly what made everyone love it. Love, after all, should recognize itself. Or so people liked to believe. We were guided into position. The bridesmaids deliberately shuffled places while Daniel faced the opposite direction. Someone spun him around twice. The guests counted loudly. 1, 2, 3, 2. Laughter echoed across the vineyard lawn. Even children stopped playing to watch. The ceremony hadn't even started. Yet this silly little game had become everyone's favorite moment. None of them knew. They were about to witness the real ceremony, not a wedding, a revelation. I stood third in line. My palms suddenly felt damp. Ridiculous. We'd lived together for 4 years. He had held my hand through my mother's funeral, through sleepless nights before business presentations, through road trips, hospital visits, movie nights, rainstorms. He could recognize my hands, couldn't he? Daniel began with the first bridesmaid. He gently held her fingers, smiled. No. He moved on. The second woman, he touched her hand only briefly. No. Someone joked, "He's taking this seriously." The crowd laughed again. I smiled. This was exactly how it should happen. Methodical. Confident. Then he reached me. His fingers wrapped gently around mine. Warm. Familiar. He paused longer than before, almost 10 full seconds. I waited for him to smile, to squeeze my hand, to say my name. Instead, his forehead tightened slightly. A tiny sound, barely noticeable, yet somehow it made my heartbeat stumble. He slowly released my hand, without saying anything, and stepped forward. The fourth woman extended her hand, Chloe. Daniel touched her fingers. Everything changed. His shoulders relaxed. A slow smile appeared. The same smile I'd watched for years whenever he solved a difficult problem. Recognition. Comfort. Certainty. He intertwined his fingers with hers, then laughed. There you are. The laughter from the guests grew louder. People assumed he was joking. The MC raised the microphone. So, who's the bride? Daniel answered immediately. This one. He lifted Chloe's hand confidently into the air. I told you, there is no way. I wouldn't recognize her. Silence. It arrived so suddenly. It almost made my ears ring. Nobody clapped. Nobody laughed. The photographer lowered his camera. One bridesmaid quietly whispered, "Oh." Daniel reached for the blindfold himself, still smiling, still completely certain he'd won. He pulled it away. The smile remained, for exactly 2 seconds. Then he saw Chloe standing in front of him, not me. His fingers instantly let go. What? He looked around wildly. His face lost all color. No. He turned toward me. Emma. It wasn't. He never finished, because Chloe had gone pale too. She wasn't acting surprised. She looked terrified. Someone nervously forced a laugh. Well, that's awkward. Nobody joined in. Across the lawn, my father slowly stood from his chair. Daniel's mother covered her mouth. The officiant quietly closed the ceremony book in his hands. Even the musicians stopped playing. The only sound left was the breeze moving through the vineyard. Daniel finally found his voice. Emma. I wasn't thinking. It was instinct. Confused. His words tangled together. For a man who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts every week, he suddenly couldn't complete one honest sentence. I looked at him, really looked at him. Not the man I'd planned to marry, the man standing in front of me. The one desperately searching for an explanation before he even understood what he had revealed. Then I looked at Chloe. She still refused to meet my eyes. Instead, she stared at the grass beneath her feet, as though the ground might open and rescue her. That hurt even more, because guilty people rarely look surprised. They look exposed. Lily quietly walked over and stood beside me. You okay? I answered without taking my eyes off them. I don't know. It was the first completely honest thing I'd said all morning. Because something inside me had just broken. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly enough. That everyone else could still pretend nothing had happened. Everyone. Except me. At that exact moment, Daniel's phone, resting on a nearby gift table, lit up with a new notification. No one noticed it, except me. And somehow, I knew I needed to see it before anyone else did. At that exact moment, Daniel's phone lit up. It rested face up on the welcome table beside the guest book, only a few feet away from where I stood. No one else noticed. Everyone was too busy staring at Daniel, still frozen in front of Chloe. I don't know why I looked. Maybe instinct, maybe survival. Or maybe my mother's voice was finally louder than my denial. When something feels wrong, stop looking for reasons to ignore it. The screen lit up again, a preview notification. Just one line. Room 214 was worth every risk. My heartbeat stopped. I stared at the screen, then it disappeared. Too quickly. Too little information. Too much meaning. Room 214. Every hotel room for our wedding guests had been assigned weeks earlier. I knew every reservation by memory. Room 214. It wasn't ours. Emma. Daniel's voice pulled me back. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I grabbed. I raised one hand. Don't. He stopped speaking. Not because I'd yelled, because my voice sounded strangely calm. I just need a minute. Without waiting for permission, I turned and walked toward the reception hall. Behind me, I heard Lily call my name. My father started after me. I quietly said, I'm okay. It was a lie. But it bought me 60 seconds, and 60 seconds was all I needed. The reception ballroom hadn't opened yet. Decorators made final adjustments. Florists arranged centerpieces. Wedding planners checked seating charts. No one questioned me. After all, I was the bride. If anyone belonged everywhere, it was me. Daniel's phone still rested on the welcome table, unlocked. He trusted me completely. Ironically, people hiding the biggest secrets often trusted the smallest habits. My fingers hovered above the screen. I almost put it back down. Looking through someone's phone crossed a line I'd never crossed in 4 years. Trust meant something to me. Then another thought arrived. Did trust still exist if only one person had been protecting it? I picked up the phone. The screen opened immediately. No password, no hesitation. The message preview had disappeared into the notification center. I opened it. Unknown number. Only one sentence. Room 214 was worth every risk. Below it, another message. Sent at 2:17 a.m. Wish we didn't have to sneak around anymore. My breathing became shallow. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it belonged to someone else. Maybe. I kept searching. Because hope, but even false hope, dies slowly. I opened the recent messages. Most conversations looked ordinary. Work, family, wedding vendors. Then, one contact. No name. Only a white heart. Strange. Daniel never used emojis for contacts. Curiosity became dread. I opened it. Hundreds of messages, not dozens. Hundreds. The first one I read was from 3 months earlier. She thinks we're discussing flower invoices. She's literally planning the wedding that's paying for our weekends together. I stopped breathing. Not because of the words, because I recognized the writing style immediately. Chloe. She always overused the word literally. Always. I kept scrolling, against every instinct telling me to stop. Photos, inside jokes, late-night conversations, hotel reservations, restaurants, excuses they'd used to meet. My hands started shaking so violently, I almost dropped the phone. One message froze everything inside me. Sometimes I feel guilty. It was Chloe. Daniel answered seconds later. Don't. Emma notices details about flowers, never people. The words blurred before my eyes. That wasn't just betrayal. That was ridicule. For years, they hadn't simply hidden from me. They had laughed at me together. A tear landed on the screen. I quickly wiped it away. Not because I cared about the phone, because I suddenly hated the idea of leaving evidence that I'd cried. Another message. Just last night. Tomorrow changes everything, Chloe had written. Daniel replied, one last performance. Then we figure it out after the honeymoon. My knees nearly gave out. After the honeymoon. They'd already planned beyond the wedding, beyond the vows, beyond me. Someone quietly knocked on the ballroom door. Emma? It was Lily. You've been gone almost 10 minutes. I locked the phone, opened the door. She immediately looked at my face. What happened? I couldn't answer. Instead, I handed her Daniel's phone. She looked confused. Then she began reading. Her expression changed with every swipe. Confusion, shock, disbelief, anger. Oh, my God, she whispered. This can't be real. It is, I answered quietly. I wish it wasn't. Lily looked up with tears filling her eyes. What are you going to do? Outside. The string quartet had begun playing the processional music. Guests were already taking their seats. The officiant waited beneath the floral arch. My father was probably looking for me. The ceremony everyone had spent a year preparing was about to begin. I slowly removed my engagement ring, turned it once between my fingers, then closed my hand around it. I looked directly at Lily. No, I said quietly. There isn't going to be a wedding. There isn't going to be a wedding. For a moment, Lily simply stared at me. The words hung between us. Too quiet, too calm, almost impossible to believe. Outside the bridal suite, the string quartet continued playing Pachelbel's Canon. Guests applauded as another limousine arrived. Someone laughed in the hallway. The entire vineyard was celebrating a future that no longer existed. Emma, Lily's voice trembled. You don't have to decide this right now. I slowly shook my head. No. I should have decided the moment they decided I wasn't worthy of the truth. She looked down at Daniel's phone, still resting in her hands. I'll call security. I'll throw Chloe out. No. I interrupted gently. I'm not canceling a wedding because they had an affair. She frowned. I'm canceling it. And because they planned to let me promise forever. You, while laughing at me behind my back. There was a difference. A huge one. Lily wrapped her arms around me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. When she finally stepped back, she wiped away her tears. What do you need? I took a slow breath. My dad. And the wedding planner. She blinked. You? A small, bitter smile crossed my face. I trained my entire career for wedding emergencies. I just never imagined I'd be managing my own. 10 minutes later, my father quietly entered the bridal suite. The moment he saw my face, he knew. No questions, no forced optimism. He simply walked over, placed one hand against my cheek, and waited. I handed him Daniel's phone. He read the messages in complete silence. His shoulders slowly slumped. When he finished, he carefully locked the screen, then handed it back to me. "I am so sorry." Those 4 words shattered the last piece of strength I'd been holding together. I buried my face against his shoulder and cried. Not loud, not dramatically. Just the quiet kind of crying that comes when your heart finally accepts what your mind has already understood. "I keep asking myself," I whispered. "How long?" My father closed his eyes. "Does it matter?" I thought about that. Not really. Whether it had been 6 months, or 2 years, or the entire relationship, the result remained the same. The man I trusted most had built our future beside someone else. A knock sounded at the door. The head coordinator stepped inside. She looked confused. "Emma, the ceremony should begin in 5 minutes." I took one long breath, then looked directly at her. "It won't." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The wedding is canceled." Every color drained from her face. "What happened?" "I'll explain. But first, I need one favor." She nodded immediately. "Anything. Please don't let anyone escort Daniel to the altar." Outside, Daniel adjusted his cufflinks for what felt like the 10th time. His best man laughed. "You nervous?" Daniel smiled. "A little." "You'll be fine." "I know." He glanced toward the vineyard. "I just wish Emma would hurry." His phone wasn't in his pocket. He frowned briefly. "That's strange. I must have left it somewhere." He had no idea. His entire future had been sitting unlocked inside the bridal suite. The officiant quietly approached him. "We're delaying the ceremony a few minutes." Daniel looked surprised. "Is everything okay?" "I believe the bride needs a moment." He smiled. "Classic wedding nerves." No one corrected him. Back inside, I looked at the engagement ring resting in my palm. Daniel had proposed beneath a lighthouse in Maine. He'd cried. I'd cried harder. For years. That ring represented the happiest night of my life. Now, it felt strangely heavy. Not because it was expensive, because every promise attached to it had become meaningless. I closed the velvet ring box. I know what I want to do. 5 minutes later, the vineyard guests began whispering. Why hadn't the music started? Why was the bride late? Had someone fainted? Had the dress ripped? Had there been an accident? Daniel checked his watch again, then looked toward the bridal cottage. Something finally felt wrong. Very wrong. The large wooden doors slowly opened. Every guest stood. Daniel smiled automatically. Then his smile disappeared. I wasn't walking toward the aisle. I wasn't wearing my veil anymore. I wasn't carrying my bouquet. Instead, I walked calmly toward the center of the ceremony space, holding only one small velvet ring box. My father walked beside me, not proudly, protectively. Every guest watched in complete silence. Daniel hurried forward. "Emma, what's going on?" I stopped several feet away, close enough for him to hear me, far enough that he couldn't touch me. "We're not getting married." Confusion spread across his face. "What?" "Emma." "What are you talking about?" I calmly held up his phone. "I found this." His face instantly lost all color. He recognized it immediately. Then he saw Lily standing behind me, and Chloe, still sitting 3 rows back, looking absolutely terrified. In that single moment, he understood exactly what had happened. "Emma, please." "I can explain." "You can," I answered quietly, "but not as my fiancé." I opened the velvet box, looked down at the engagement ring one final time, then walked to the small welcome table where every guest had signed their names before the ceremony. I gently placed the ring beside the guest book. The tiny sound of metal touching wood echoed through the silent vineyard. I looked back at Daniel. My voice remained calm, steady, almost heartbreakingly gentle. I'm not ending a wedding today. I paused. I'm ending a lie. Before it becomes a marriage. I'm ending a lie. Before it becomes a marriage. Not a single person moved. The vineyard, filled only moments earlier with celebration, now stood completely still. The wind gently carried the scent of lavender through the rows of grapevines. Somewhere in the distance, a wine glass tipped over. No one even turned to look. Every eye remained fixed on Daniel. He stared at the engagement ring resting beside the guest book, then back at me. His lips parted. Nothing came out. Finally, he whispered, "Emma." "This isn't what it looks like." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because after everything I'd read, those were still the first words he chose. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I hurt you." Just, "This isn't what it looks like." I slowly held up his phone. It looks like hundreds of messages. It looks like hotel rooms. It looks like lies. It looks like my best friend. It looks like the man I was about to marry. I met his eyes. So tell me, what exactly doesn't it look like? Daniel swallowed hard. The silence answered before he did. Guests shifted uneasily. A woman in the second row quietly began crying. Someone lowered the phone they'd been using to record the ceremony. Across the aisle, Daniel's mother looked from her son to me, to Chloe. Her face slowly crumbled. "No, Anne," she whispered. "No. Please tell me this isn't true." Daniel couldn't, because the truth was already sitting in my hand. Finally, he stepped toward me. It was a mistake. It ended. It meant nothing. I laughed once, quietly. It meant nothing. You booked hotel rooms. You made plans after our honeymoon. You called our wedding one last performance. Every word struck harder than the last. Daniel's face turned pale. He realized I'd seen everything. Every message, every joke, every lie. He reached toward me instinctively. "Emma." I took one step back. He stopped immediately. That tiny movement hurt him more than any slap ever could. For 4 years, I'd always reached for him. Today, I moved away. Then, for the first time, I looked at Chloe. She hadn't spoken a single word. She sat frozen in the third row, tears streaming silently down her face. The woman I'd once called my sister couldn't even look at me. "How long?" I asked. She closed her eyes. 9 months. The number echoed through the vineyard. 9 months. 300 days. Hundreds of conversations. Countless dinners. Birthday parties. Holiday meals. Dress fittings. Cake tastings. Every smile. Every hug. Every reassuring word had happened while they were already betraying me. "I'm sorry," Chloe whispered. The words barely reached me. "I never wanted to hurt you." I nodded slowly. "I believe you." She looked up hopefully. Then I continued. "You just decided your happiness mattered more than mine." Whatever hope remained inside her disappeared. Because she knew. I was right. Daniel suddenly spoke again. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just happened." My father took one slow step forward. "No, His voice remained calm. Affairs don't just happen. They're built. One decision, then another, and another, until honesty becomes harder than deception. Daniel lowered his head. He couldn't argue, not with a man who had spent 40 years honoring one marriage. The officiant quietly closed his ceremony book. "I've performed weddings for 28 years, he said softly. I've never seen a bride show this much grace. He looked at me. You could have exposed them weeks from now. You chose truth before vows. You saved yourself. His words settled gently over the crowd. For the first time all afternoon, I realized he was right. I hadn't lost a marriage. I'd escaped one. The reception never happened. Guests quietly left the vineyard. Some hugged me, others hugged my father. Daniel's family apologized through tears. His mother held both my hands. I thought I was gaining a daughter, she whispered. I lost one because my son forgot how to be an honest man. I hugged her tightly. This wasn't your failure. She cried anyway. 3 months later, I left San Francisco. Every street carried memories I no longer wanted. I rented a tiny storefront in Portland. It had peeling paint, old wooden floors, a leaking roof, and exactly enough space for one dream. A flower shop. The dream Daniel had never even remembered. I called it Second Bloom, because some lives deserve another season. The first months were brutally difficult. I arranged flowers by day, balanced invoices at night, delivered bouquets myself because hiring employees wasn't yet possible. Some weeks, I barely earned enough to cover rent, more than once. I sat alone after closing, wondering whether I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Then a little girl walked into the shop one rainy afternoon. She couldn't have been older than 8. She held 5 crumpled $1 bills. I need flowers, she said, for my grandma. I asked, what's the occasion? She smiled. She says flowers don't need occasions. I built the prettiest bouquet those $5 could buy. When the girl left, I realized I had smiled for the first time in months. Not because I was finally over Daniel, because I was finally building something that belonged only to me. Second Bloom slowly became part of the neighborhood. People didn't come only to buy flowers. They came to celebrate engagements, to welcome babies, to apologize after arguments, to say goodbye at funerals. Every bouquet carried a piece of someone's story. And somehow, helping strangers through life's biggest moments helped heal my own. Almost a year later, the shop door opened just before closing. The little brass bell chimed softly. I looked up. Daniel stood there. He looked older. Not because of time, because regret leaves its own fingerprints. He held no flowers, no gifts, only himself. I've been looking for you, he said quietly. I nodded toward the display of fresh white peonies. My favorite flowers, I smiled gently. You finally remembered. His eyes filled with tears. I remember everything now. I believed him. Pain has a remarkable way of improving memory. He took a slow breath. If I could go back, I'd choose you. I looked around the little flower shop, the handwritten thank you notes hanging on the wall, the photographs from community workshops, the employees laughing in the back room as they cleaned buckets, the life I'd built from broken promises. Then I looked back at him. I know, I answered softly. But the woman who would have accepted that apology never opened this flower shop. He lowered his head. I lost you. No, I said gently. You lost the version of me who kept choosing everyone else before herself. He nodded once. A sad smile crossed his face. I hope you're happy. I looked around my little shop one more time. The scent of fresh flowers filled the room. Sunlight poured through the front windows. Customers laughed outside. For the first time in a very long time, the future didn't frighten me. I am, I answered honestly after Daniel quietly walked away. I picked up a bouquet of white peonies and placed it in the front window, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as a promise to myself. Some flowers bloom only once. Others bloom again. After surviving the harshest winter, so do people. And sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever live isn't the one where someone finally chooses you. It's the one where, after everything you've survived, you finally choose yourself.